32 years ago, a tragedy took place in the Azerbaijani city of Khojaly, the genocide of Khojaly committed by Armenian nationalists. Khojaly for every Azerbaijani is not only the memory of 613 innocent victims being killed, tortured or frozen. It's a deep, unhealed wound, which only now seems to be healing when the Khojaly region has been liberated from many years of occupation. However, those who bore witness to the horrors of those days, the nightmares of the Khojaly tragedy, will never forget it.
I, Aliya Abishova, was born in 1981 in Khojaly. I am a living witness of the Khojaly tragedy. I am afraid to remember those terrible events every time, but that time, days, hours, minutes, haunts me like a nightmare. That day, at about 11 p.m., Khojaly was surrounded from all sides. The city was shelled every day and night. We decided that this was the same kind of shelling as the previous ones, so we ran out of the house barefoot and hid in a neighbor's basement. We just didn't have time to get rest and put our shoes on. Already in the basement, we realized that this night was completely different. As soon as the shelling began, the residents of Khojaly fled towards the forest. But we didn't know about it, because on that day, February 25th, we were sitting in the basement. In the morning, our men came, who spent the night on the border of the village, and reported that the Armenians were close, almost reaching Khojaly. We came out of the basement, and they, the Armenians, saw us. We couldn't escape into the forest. Houses were built in Khojaly for internally displaced persons from Konkendi and Meskishan Turkish refugees. We hid in these houses, but when the Armenians found out about our shelter, they began to surround us. There were brave fighters among our people. They fought heroically. After a while, we were able to leave the buildings and head towards the forest. We walked through the forest for 3 days, crossing the Goga River. We walked across the river barefoot because we couldn't get home and get dressed. The weather was frosty. We couldn't feel our legs. My feet froze already halfway there. I don't remember the other half of the way. My mother thought I was cold and dead. She thought she was carrying my corpse. I remember the voices of the Armenians. They seemed to be calling us from all sides in Azerbaijani. I still hear those voices. I'll never forget them. There were quite a few of our people who got caught in this. They were captured. There are about 20 of us left. The rest were captured. Others died. There were corpses everywhere. As soon as it seemed to us that the Armenians had noticed us, we ran deep into the forest again. When the Azerbaijanis came to us from Agdam, we believed that they were ours, our own. Come back. Don't go into the forest, they shouted, but we didn't listen. We were afraid. I remember corpses that were bullied and abused. We even hid behind dead bodies, as if we didn't realize that they were dead. I was conscious about half the way to the village of Nakhchivan, then I disappeared into my memories. When we got to the hospital in Agdam, I was handed over to the doctors as dead, but the doctors told my mother that I was still breathing, that I was alive, but my feet were severely frostbitten, in a terrible state. I was treated in Baku for 5 months, but to no avail. Then the doctors decided to amputate, and on the day of the operation, the doctor decided to check the sensitivity with a sharp needle again. Suddenly I began to move my legs. It was a miracle. I remember how the doctor was formed to tears. My mother told me all this much later. After February 1992, I was treated in a Baku hospital for a long time. Then we settled in Naftalan and lived there. We suffered a lot of difficulties. It was difficult. Many of my relatives, aunts, grandmothers, cousins, were captured. The Armenians tortured my aunt, forced her to wash their cars in an icy river barefoot and without warm clothes in the bitter cold in winter. Some time passed. Prisoners were exchanged, and my family returned.
Təbii ki biz 32 ildir bu həsrətlə yaşamışıq və
For 32 years we lived with the hope that our lands would be returned. At every event, on every holiday, we wished each other, may the day come when we, and thank God that day has come. And now we can say that it's over. How many of our loved ones died longing for their native land? We lived in our country as internally displaced persons. Now all Khojaly residents are ready to return home as soon as possible and live there. These lands are holy to us, because it was there that the blood of our martyrs was shed. There is the crying and last gasp of the children killed by the Armenians. There is the farewell look of the old people who could not escape. Returning home to Khojaly was an impossible dream for us. And today, thanks to the wise policy of the president and the competent strategy of our valiant army, we can return to our native lands.
Xarici və daxili siyasət nəticəsində və ordumuzun şücaəti nəticəsində bu bizə qismət oldu.